Let me share my screen. That will walk us through what I want to share tonight, even though it's no longer in the right slide order. Um, but we're talking about our Lenten life here at Westminster, and there are several components to that that I want to walk you through. And the biggest one's going to be the use of our book, Surprise the World. And I want to give you an intro to that as well. At this point in time, I know you all have it, and I finished my deliveries today. So we've should have over 100 plus, I think, that now have a copy of this
Yes,
book in their
they
hand.
should.
And I know our goal was 150. So we're getting close to our goal, and hopefully people will take a look at this. And tomorrow is the beginning of Lent, so hopefully we'll open that up and be prepared for Ash Wednesday. I will say the Ash Wednesday service is online and will be available after midnight tonight for anybody to watch anytime tomorrow. There's no specific time that's going to be released other than after midnight. So those who want to wake up early and do it as their morning wake up call and morning devotion, they can. If they prefer to do it during the day or the evening, they got that option as well. But yeah, just encourage them that. And I think I'll send an email out in the morning with that information, but I can't do that now because we don't have the ability. So anyway, we're going to talk about Surprise the World a lot because what we're doing is kind of threefold. And since I wanted to preview before we got to the season of Lent, kind of what's going on, of course, we're going to follow each of the 5 habits for the first 5 weeks of Lent. In other words, each one of these will be my sermon message each week in some form or fashion. When I have a book that goes along with a sermon series, I don't preach the book. So you may get little hints of what's in the book, but I try not to duplicate what the author has said because I want you to read. That's why you got the book. And I think you'll enjoy it. He's from Australia. He has a different feel and scope of what the church is like. He's a pastor and teacher and has traveled the world in speaking. Our superintendent, John Strother, who met Michael Frost years ago, and they've been friends ever since, met him when he was doing a revival in Rose Hill, North Carolina.
Whoa.
So Michael Frost, Australian, has been to the Duplin, county capital of wine country, prior to it really being wine country, I believe. But he knows a little bit about Eastern North Carolina.
Home of the world's largest.
What was that, Tony?
It's home of the world's largest frying pan too.
Oh, that frying pan was there before the winery, I think.
That's right.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. So he's got a little sense about Eastern North Carolina is my only point. The second part is I want to kind of give us opportunity to discuss things, and I'm going to finish that, come back to that in a little while, about having small group discussions related to the book and the sermons. So be kind of interesting thing. I want to show you this video clip right quick because this is actually Frost introducing the book and what it means to talk about 5 habits. So take a look at this.
Hi, my name is Mike Frost, and I want to speak to you about the importance of fostering missional habits in your life. You're probably used to the fact that churches are promoting all sorts of habitual practices as a way of shaping you to become more like Jesus. Churches would expect that you would attend worship meetings weekly. That's a weekly habit or rhythm. That habit or rhythm reinforces the importance of gathering together, of worshiping God, of studying the Bible. So the regular Sunday meetings are a habitual practice that shapes the kind of people that we are. Well, we have small group meetings or connect groups or Bible studies, whatever your church might call them, and those are ways of weekly or fortnightly developing a rhythm or a habit that says it's important that we share life with each other and that we listen to what the Word of God would say to us. Most churches would expect that their members would habitually tithe or contribute financially to the life of the church, and all of these things are good things. In fact, I do all of these things myself. So they're good, and I want to affirm them. But I do want to ask this question. How many of the regularly expected habits that your church fosters, how many of those would you say are missional? That is to say, how many of the regular habitual lifestyle practices promoted by your church actually propel you outwards into the world to alert others to the reign of God? Now, I'm not being all critical or anything. It just seems to me that for most of us, our church lives foster habits that bind us to each other, which is good. which connect us more deeply to God by hearing his word or through prayer, Bible study and the like, which is good. But what's expected of us that's going to propel us outwards? It seems to me most of our missional activities in our churches, they are kind of extracurricular. You know, you're expected to come to church, you're expected to be in a small group, expected to tithe, expected to pray, those kinds of things. And if you've got a bit of extra time, would you volunteer in this program or be part of that ministry and the like? But which is good, don't get me wrong, I'm fine with it all, except I have found there's incredible value in developing a set of habits that bind me to God's commitment to propel me into this world. That's what I want us to think about today. I want us to think about what habitual practices would help me do that. My question is, what would it look like if at the very core of our churches, there are a series of habits, required or expected behaviors that helped bind us to each other and did help us connect more deeply with God, but which also propelled us outwards as sent ones into the world in which God's placed us. You see, it's been common for us to think that we need to get our thinking right, and then in right thinking, we'll be propelled to act correctly as well. The technical way of talking about that is to say that orthodoxy, right thinking, leads to orthopraxy. In other words, we think our way into a new way of living. And maybe you've had experiences like that. You've learned things, it's changed the way you think, and then you've acted upon that. That's great. But you also know lots of people do the reverse. We learn how to live in a particular way, and that then shapes our thinking. If you were raised in the church, for example, your parents probably raised you with these habitual practices I was just talking about, going to church, worship, small groups, those kinds of things. The lifestyle then shaped the way you thought about yourself and God and fostered your faith in Christ. Both are right. You can move from orthodoxy to orthopraxy, or you can move from orthopraxy into orthodoxy. And it's that second category I want us to think about. Missional habits are basically saying, is it possible for us to foster a lifestyle which promotes our thinking about what the mission of God looks like? Throughout my book, Surprise the World, I unpack each of those 5 habits, and I talk about how living these habits, living them habitually, not only bind us to each other, they propel us outwards into the world. I want to encourage you to consider that these might actually become set patterns, not in a legalistic or constraining way, but a way which frees you to connect more deeply with God, more profoundly with each other, and actually to propel you outwards into the world that so desperately needs to know God.
Tony, you'll be happy to see that Baptist comment there, help connect with the old roots there. And, Frost actually kind of crossed denominations at this point, and Australia is a very different world, so we want to get into that. But, this is not a Wesleyan thing. This is not a Methodist thing. This is something that just allows us to speak a language that comes around being disciple makers that we're called to be. That is our commission, to go out and make disciples of all the world. So this is just putting some habits into practice that actually, as I read, I was like, this is actually simple. It's not something that takes any advanced degrees to talk about. It's something that, Kate, we're going to do with youth on Sunday night, talk about this just a little bit to kind of put it in hands. I'm if anybody reads the book, I'll buy them ice cream, but youth, that is, not adults. Sorry about that, Anna.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
That's all right. We'll celebrate somehow. But if our youth do it, I think they'll find that this is something that can be done with any age group. And it's just that simple, because as we talk about each habit, these are things in some ways we're doing already. We just don't know we're doing them for the movement of the kingdom. So before I get to these questions, I'm just curious, what did he say in that video that just, made you stop and want to say, anything surprising, anything that you just felt like was moving?
What do you think? I liked orthodoxy to orthopraxy. That was like boom.
That's the theologian coming out there.
Right.
Big words.
There was a lot of things. That's why I don't really know.
Well, just give us one. Just one.
Well, like what Mom said about, orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and like there's two different, ways you can do it and evolve. Like how he said, like kids were raised in the church by their parents. They think differently maybe about God and worshiping and things like that. And I was raised in the church, so I feel like that kind of connected with me.
Mhm.
I think they've got me thinking about, as you said, coming up in Baptist, we're always got some kind of missions going on, and it is easy to get
To think
satisfied with
inward.
with, I see Ann at church every Sunday. We talk, we fellowship, we take care of each other, we take care of our other church family, and we come inward. But our great commission is to reach outward and to win souls to Christ. So he made me think about a little bit, how easy it is for us to get on a committee or whatever, and we have whatever event we may be doing or whatever thing we may think is a mission. It's really a gathering of the church within itself, which is fine too, as he pointed out. That needs to happen also. But I think that reaching outward sometimes gets to be, kind of on the back burner. So.
Mhm. I was kind of raised in the church, but not really. When my parents got very busy with a nursing home on Sundays, this reminded me of how my parents would set me on their front porch, and I never knew who would pick me up, but there were three couples, and somebody from the Methodist church would come and pick me up and take me to church and then to lunch. It was beautiful, just the way that I evolved or whatever. But it was not necessarily from my parents, but it was beautiful. I never knew who was going to pick me up, but someone always came Sunday to pick me up from the front porch of the nursing home.
Mhm.
Wow. That's pretty cool. They cared enough to make sure that you were cared for, and also getting an opportunity to be formed in Christ.
Exactly.
That's special.
That's
special.
Awesome.
It fits what he's talking about in many ways, and all of you said interesting parts that I think are so true. And Kate, you were talking about how that raising in the church, the things you believe, and I was thinking about that in my own life the other day, about how much the church prepared me for a way of thinking by teaching me a set of beliefs with the Apostles' Creed, teaching me the prayer, the Lord's Prayer, and how to say it, teaching me different elements to think about. But the most memorable experiences are the ones where they taught me how to put life into action. And that's what I think about a lot about. And I shared a little bit on Sunday about traveling and doing work and having experiences of meeting God on the mountain. And this week I'm going to share another story about that, because being a blessing was taught there. And it was, when you get hands on, it's different. And so I think one of the things I find intriguing about the habits is this is a way of life that it's not just about it's not just about your head, it's about your heart. And John Wesley was big about saying that your head and heart had to connect, so that you have a vital piety, that you can't just think about it all the time and you can't just do it. They've got to connect and be one. And that's how you have a sense of holiness. The two independently, forget about it. But if you put them together, there's a great transformation that takes effect. Let me pull the slides back up. I want to talk about this thing that when you start reading the book, you'll catch on to. But he talks about that we need to live questionable lives. And Tony, you were mentioning that sense of Baptist mission, and often our Baptist friends talk more about evangelism than we do in the Methodist Church. And sometimes, no matter where it is, evangelism gets a bad rap because it can be a numbers game, and you can go to a revival and they can talk how many people got saved,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that's what Jesus was really calling us to do.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
there's no Billy Graham revival sitting in the middle of the book of Acts. The closest thing we have it is the day of Pentecost, and Peter's preaching to a big crowd and 3,000 get saved. But everywhere else, you have one-on-one encounters of people sharing life and people coming up. I'm thinking about the Ethiopian eunuch all of a sudden that comes up and says, "Hey, I've been reading these scriptures. I want you to tell me more and baptize me." To Philip, it's that wasn't a revival. That was someone that just wanted to ask a question to someone he thought was a Christian, and next thing you know, we got a baptized eunuch right there, very much outside the home base faith of Jerusalem. So I got as he describes living a questionable life, he says that we need to have a life that evokes questions from people around us. So what kind of life do you think evokes questions from the people who live and work around us?
I think how our coworkers or our whomever we're around a lot sees us, and how we conduct ourselves, how we go to church, how we seemingly live a good holy life. There are three things I think that happen to all of us, and you're either probably in life, throughout life, you're in a crisis, you're coming out of a crisis, or you're about to go into one somewhere in life. So
That's true.
when these people that are in one of those three stages see you, and you seem happy and full of the Spirit and trying to live a godly life, that's when, like the eunuch, they come to you and they say, "I want some of what you seem to have," And
Yeah.
I think that's if we live our lives that way, then that kind of questionable life is one that can draw people into God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents' generation was that generation that if you didn't go to church, you were the folks that were strange. Yeah, and my childhood generation was that generation that distractions became acceptable, and so you started seeing even folks my parents' age say, what, this is not as important as us taking care of the family or making sure the kids are at their games, or let's just take some family time at the beach where I live, or we've got a boat, we need to use it, Sunday's the best time. I've said it before, my home church created an early service partially because they knew in the summertime people wanted to be able to come to church at 8:30 and get to the beach before breakfast, before brunch, and stay out there all day, and it worked. Now we're at a point that if you go to church, and not so much in Eastern North Carolina, but definitely in other parts of our own state and these United States especially, going to church is the exception, not the rule. And having a living faith is even more exceptional and not the rule. And Kate, you're in a different situation going to a Christian school.
Yep.
But some of our fellow youth that are going to other schools, they're somewhat little bits of island when it comes to having conversations about Jesus. It's just not the norm. So there's plenty of people.
Strange being there with like all the people, because I'm so used to like being around my friends who all of them are Christians, like all of them know about God, and then going to this strange place where these people didn't care. And we had this thing on Fridays that was led by a man at my old school, Britt Crowder, who would come to Contentia, and he would like give a sermon about God and to the people who wanted to hear it. And I asked my friends, I was like, "You want to go with me?" Because I'm so used to my friends doing that and going to youth group with me. But they said, "No, we'll stay behind. You go ahead. We'll see you later."
Mm.
Wow, that was strange that they didn't want to go.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, how do we live in such a way that sparks those kind of questions? That you're living in such a way, Kate, that those friends decide, I want to go not because I know what Kate's going to, but because if she's going, I want to be there with her. How do we have such a life that, it's okay not to have Christian friends, because if we only had Christian friends, we'd have nobody to share our faith with. So how do we live a life that inspires those who are not active in their faith? And I want to throw this caveat in there. When I say Christian friends, I'm not talking about the ones who just call themselves church people. I'm talking about those who have a real active relationship with Jesus, so that not just folks who take up space on a pew, but are on fire for Christ in a way that they truly live a life you're going, what is up with them? How do we live in such a way that sparks those questions?
I feel like maybe like if we just we live a life that we treat people like we would like to be treated, and we're not, we don't discriminate against people, and we're just, you be friendly and nice. And I feel like if people saw that they would want to, be like you and say, how do you do this? How are you so nice? How are you so friendly? How do you do this? And you're like, well, I believe in God. I read my Bible and I see what he does for these people and how much he loves us, and just, being a good person is how I think we can get those non-Christian people to be on fire for God and want to follow him and spread it to other people.
And on that note, we're done. Mic drop. Kate's preaching the next 5 weeks. I'll see you later.
There you go. That's right. She's got it.
Awesome. We're going to just let that be. I think it's perfect. Really, the way we treat others is a lot of what people see. And it's a big critique of the Christian church right now, is it not?
Yeah.
I shared with the group that joined me yesterday that, there's a whole conversation that goes around the number of people who love Jesus but don't like the church.
Yeah.
Because the church has become the thing that doesn't really show off who Jesus is. And that's kind of sad.
Very.
Kind of sad. Let me move on here so we can keep our time. He says in the book this line that I thought was really powerful. Evangelistic mission works effectively when we are living generous, hospitable, spirit-led, Christ-like lives as missionaries to our own neighborhoods. And when the gifted evangelists in our midst join us in sharing Christ with our neighbors, that's not good evangelism strategy. That's the biblical model. So again, the way we live and how we affect those we live around is just as or more important than having the good preacher come in, proclaim the name of Jesus and see what happens. Because you're going to see it now. Relationship is key to spreading the good news of Jesus. They want to live with people. They want to see how other regular people act. They want to make sure when they go into the office that when they see their boss who was there on Sunday morning, that boss is going to treat them like Christ in the workplace, just like Jesus told them to on Sunday morning. They want to make sure that when you're at school that, just because you went to church and looked all nice and pretty for grandma, that on, Monday through Friday, you're acting in a way that exhibits that Christ-like love that's in you too. So I think that's a key part of this conversation, is helping people trigger that, the biggest work we have is sometimes right around us as we go about this. So let me tell you what I want to do, kind of, why I wanted to get people kind of onto the game here before we start, is that I really want to form some discussion groups around these conversations, ongoing through the season of Lent. They can start anytime after Sunday, because my thought is that I can preach on Sunday, and then a discussion group can come together anytime after I preach, discuss the sermon and the book conversation about how you live out that habit. And then it'll be each of those habits is following this pattern of bells. You'll learn in the book that this book was written after his own church was putting this in practice. So, and sometimes, you write the plan up and then you live it. They were living it, and then they wrote it out so they could share it with others, because so many people were admiring what they were doing. So, this idea of bells: bless, eat, listen, learn, and sent. Something we'll discuss over the next 5 weeks. I'd like you to help form those groups. I don't want to, hand pick. I want groups to form. They may be existing groups that want to just change what they're doing. They may be opportunities for new groups to form, especially with our younger adult working population. We noted in the past that, many people have said all our learning groups are in the morning when we are working. So might be something we can do in the evening, might be something we can do on Sunday or on the weekend. With that in mind, I want the groups to decide how they want to meet. Some people are very, very comfortable meeting face to face. Other folks are still hesitant and they want to wait a little bit, but we can do online. I did this with a group of pastors in January and early February, and we're scattered about the whole Sound District. And so we had 15, 16 people meeting at a time for what was us 4 weeks, 5 weeks with the introduction. And I just got off a retreat this weekend that had 56 people from all over the state of North Carolina and about 4 other states involved in that. So online, it's not everybody's favorite, but it does work. And I'm happy to resource that. And if the group would like me to participate, I will do my best. We just got to coordinate that, with my schedule, because I'm not going to be able to do all the groups if we got a bunch, but I'll do as much as I can. But I will resource that group with kind of a guideline that lets you kind of walk through a little time of worship and fellowship, as well as going into the deep dive of asking questions and doing the formation. So that's my big ask of you in this conversation tonight. What I asked the group yesterday, what I'm asking again on Sunday, because I'm going to keep pushing it out there, and it does not have to start next week. If we can, then you'll line up with the sermons. If we have to delay, I think the formation of the group is more important than the timing of it as we go about. As you read, he'll talk about the formation of groups at the end for ongoing life together. And he uses, I think you heard in the video, he says a fortnight. Don't forget, he's got that Australian, background, but that's every 2 weeks. So that's pretty cool. And when I think about these small groups, it just kind of fits our Wesleyan way of life. At the very heart of who we are, Methodist people, was the methodology that you live together in small groups. Wesley called them classes. They also get called small covenant groups, life groups, cell groups. Call it whatever you want, but that small group of people coming together on a regular basis for spiritual formation is really how the Methodist movement became just that. The idea of planting churches everywhere and getting hundreds of people in that church was not the initial draw. It was getting people in cell community where they could grow intimately together with Jesus Christ. We did really well with that for about the first 150 years of Methodism. And then we decided to please a bunch of people and say that's not an expectation. And ever since 1904, the church has been in decline. So where you find vital churches doing vital ministry and seeing lives changed is when we come back to this sense of getting involved in some kind of small group setting where you can grow with Christ and grow with each other. So again, this is something that while we're starting now, I will hope that we can continue and see more and more people get involved with, because this is where the heart of ministry really lies. I've always found a way to be a part of some small group within the life of the churches I'm a part of. We had a couple different groups in my last church, plus I had a couple different pastors groups that I was involved in as well. But if you can get involved with one in the life of our church, that'd be great. And by the way, these people don't all have to be connected with Westminster. Folks that are neighbors that, they just want to be a part of something. So, hey, so be it. I think it's a great way to kind of share faith with folks. There are some people that come to your dinner table before they will ever step foot in the church. And so if you can share Christ in that and breaking in that bread, thanks be to God. So let me stop there and see what questions you have about what we're kind of talking about here, and then it won't take but a heartbeat to wrap up. So let me just pause it right here and see what questions and thoughts and comments you have.
I don't know if I do. I think
I said everything.
Which
You
is
said
normal.
everything? I forgot.
That
Kate's preaching
No.
Sunday, so I'm off the hook, so it's all good.
I know. Wow. She always has something to say, but
That's good. We shall not quelch the voice of the young. We shall let them speak wide and loud.
Right.
Mhm.
This kind of reminds me of Emmaus in a way. The small groups too. And I'm a part of a small group, and it's wonderful to have the bonding, the sharing that you know that you can trust.
Hey, guess where Emmaus came out of?
Where?
Methodist movements.
Okay,
I
that's
mean, the cell
great.
concept. Yeah,
Yes,
the cell concept
I can
is
see that.
ours.
Yep. It's
Look,
very
many moons
special.
ago, I went to Willow Creek, which was one of the largest churches in the country at the time.
Mhm.
And John Ortberg, who was then a teaching pastor at Willow Creek, took the stage for a really cool presentation, and he preached. And as I was sitting there, he cited the importance of small groups in the Willow Creek community
Mhm.
and in vital church communities. And then he quoted John Wesley
Wow.
and talked about the movement that Wesley began with small groups. And I'm sitting there with several of my Methodist colleagues going, how are we sitting here in this, Reformed megachurch,
Yep.
listening to people talk about Wesley trying to teach us how we should do church?
Yep.
We know this stuff. It's
Yep.
part of our DNA. And it's part of what's happening in the revitalization and renewal movements of churches, and any new church that starts out with this pattern before they even do a worship service. So yeah, it's Emmaus is part of the upper room, which comes right out of Methodism 101.
Exactly. That's right. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Other thoughts?
Thoughts or comments, Mom?
Questions?
I don't think so. I think I understand thinking, but not speaking.
It's all right. You know where to find me.
That's right.
So here's my challenge to us all. Of course, we need to worship as frequently as possible, the best way possible. We're online for sure for the next couple of weeks, but we're gonna go ahead and start our Lenten journey. There's no delay. Invite friends and neighbors to form a discussion group. Again, I don't care if they're members of Westminster. I don't care if they've been to Westminster. There are plenty of folks out there that have a desire to talk about Jesus. We just got to find them. So these groups can be 2, 3, 4 people. I wouldn't go above 10. I think that's getting too large, but to be honest with you, and that's general. That's not COVID talking. That's really about 8 to 12 is the magic number. 10 is the average. It just depends on who they are and how well they can facilitate dynamics. And then schedule your gathering. And if I need to be a part of it, then just schedule with me. But if you're comfortable leading and facilitating your own, I will resource you with everything. Each week has a short video. They are no more than 5 minutes long, if I recall, with Frost talking about each habit. And then there's already discussion questions in the back of the book, and I'll help form around that a little bit. So you have a guide to facilitate with, and depending on how your gifts and graces feel, you can use that or throw it out the window. Either way. And then lastly, I believe that faith is fun, and I believe it's the most exciting part of life in many degrees. And if we can't have fun with Jesus, we probably need to find something else to be doing, because it should be something we enjoy and we want to come to. There are moments it's going to be hard, and it's going to, could be life wrecking in a good way. But absolutely, I think as we do this work, it's truly a fun journey and a better journey when we have others with us. So anyway, that's what I have.
How long, Dennis, would a session meet? I mean, how long would it take together, or how long would it be? How long would it run? What am I trying to say? Y'all know what I'm saying.
You mean like an hour or
45 minutes, 30 minutes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah,
I guess that's kind of up to you though, really, isn't it? I mean,
really it is. So
okay.
my rule of thumb is that you can do a good group in about 75 minutes. Now, that is from the time you actually start doing the material and not the 30 minutes of socializing that goes on before and after. And if you throw food in there, you need to add another 15 to 20, depending on the size of the group. So it's just really how it's managed. But I always, my rule of thumb, and I learned this from somebody else, and it's worked well, is plan on for a group of 8 to 12, taking no more than about 75 minutes a time. Now, I will amend that. If you're doing it via Zoom, the work of the session should be no more than an hour.
That's right. But
you can still have 15 minutes of gathering. So what I've found works with some other groups that I've been a part of is like tonight, come on at 6:45 and you start at 7. That gives everybody a little time to socialize, snooze and lose virtually. And then you start the clock at 7 o'clock. And then by an hour later, you're saying we're done. But if anybody wants to hang out, you can. But that's how I think the most effective groups can work in this, especially in this time in this setting. But again, most of the overtime is when people start socializing, going way off topic.
Okay.
So for a facilitator, that's an important part is, and I've been a part of groups where you intentionally divide out. There's a facilitator and there's a timekeeper, and the timekeeper is to help keep things moving along, to make sure everybody knows, hey, this is where we are, but let it be spirit led too. I mean,
absolutely.
I learned a long time ago to let the Spirit lead it, and I have led retreats with youth where parents have had to wait outside an extra 35, 40 minutes because there was a powerful moment going on inside, and we sent a message out through another adult saying, everything's good, but we got something important that's going on and we're not stopping.
Right. Absolutely.
Kind of like in the Baptist church, we'd have an altar call, and you'd sing "Just As I Am" about 15 times all the way through. You know? A lot of people were coming, we didn't stop. So
you didn't go to the church with the plant that said after 17 verses, I'm getting up no matter what, even though I've been up 3 times this year.
Oh, Lozzie.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I thank y'all for being on, and you know how to get up with me, and I'll see y'all, I'm sure, in the next couple of days. But I would really love to see 2 or 3 groups get started, and I'll be happy to again resource or be a part as I can. But I think this is something we can get kind of going. There are a couple other churches in our district that I know are going to be doing something during Lent. We've all packaged it in a different way, I understand, which I think is great. A buddy of mine actually wrote his sermons out before Christmas, what he was preaching over Lent. So he's already shared those with me. I'm like, you are crazy. But he's already had them drafted out. I'm like, you way to go, you. So they're going to focus in on the sermon time, and why I think that's important. I think this small group thing is where we'll really find some great vitality and something to build off of. It's perfect setting in the sense of life of COVID because you can still connect with people in a deep way, and those relationships can carry on afterwards. So I hope this is something that brings us good fruit in time to come, and we'll continue to talk about these because while this is 5 weeks, my hope is that we can continue having small group relationship continue in ways that will really help transform the kingdom.